you can radically simplify your company, it's just easier to run. And if you can radically simplify your processes, it's easier for lower level employees to do that. Simplify it out, make it where anyone can do it. Do a lot of videos. Videos really help that out. But yeah, simplify hiring, simplify your product, simplify how you serve your customers.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Hi, and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. My name is Rick Nuske. I'm on the line with mattknee, who's the CEO and founder of mycompanyworks. How are you, Matt?
Very good, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Now, I was fortunate to be introduced to Matt by one of his amazing team members, and it's been just a wonderful journey up to now, because I've looked at some of the feedback that your clients are sharing with you on mycompanyworks. It's a very established business, and today's focus is going to be on Matt's book, Startups Made Simple: How to Start, Grow, and Systemize Your Dream Business. But before we get into that, Matt, as is customary, we'd love to share a little bit about the person behind the business. I was wondering if you could share a little bit about yourself with the My Future Business audience.
Sure. Started My Company Works in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
I was 26 years old at the time. I was working for Yahoo.
Yep.
At the time, and I did it in my spare time after work. It was a side hustle. I had been working on a search engine project where we saw we were trying to correct misspellings. So when people would search for Britney Spears, there's like 20 different ways to spell Britney or whatever. So we would go in and we would match them to the correct. I happen to have been assigned to the I letter. And one of the things I saw was just thousands of people searching for incorporate, incorporation services. And they were misspelling it, of course. Yes. Incorporate in Texas, incorporate in California. So that's how I started the company, essentially, because I knew there was demand, and I'd always been interested in startups, as it were. And there was really nothing out there at the time that was really helping do kind of the whole startup process. There were a few competitors that had done stuff like that, but mostly I just focused on that. So that's how I started the company. As far as me personally, I was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Grew up there, grew up in Texas. Went to college at Whittier College in California. And basically out of college, I just worked until I had started my company. So I've had the company now for 18 years, believe it or not. It's crazy. Sounds crazy to me when I say it.
Yeah. So I wonder, is there much downtime for you? Do you do anything, I guess, with family, friends in terms of sports? Anything like that?
I'm not huge into sports. I do lift weights and exercise occasionally, but I'm not huge into sports. I do watch MMA, like the UFC and stuff like that. I like watching that, but I have a lot of family time now. That's the point of why I wrote the book, is because I've systemized my company. I can basically choose to work when I want. I can take vacations when I want now. It's very, very relaxing to be at that point. And I know a lot of people are struggling and they're day to day, and that's why I wrote the book. It's basically how to get out of working in the business, work on the business. So I have plenty of time for free time and vacations and whatnot.
I'd love to talk about your process. Where did you start to realize that, hey, look, I'm, like the duck analogy, looking pretty calm on top, but going crazy underneath, and that moment in time that you knew that you needed to create a better way?
Well, geez, listen, I think almost every entrepreneur goes through that point where their day to day is just chaos. You got a pile of things to do. You got 20 different things. Almost every startup entrepreneur is some kind of generalist. And they're doing books, they're doing marketing, they're doing customer support, they're doing 20 different things. And it's one thing to do that in your 20s and you have the energy. In your 30s, it starts fading away. And now that I'm in my 40s, geez, even just looking at an email that upsets me drains my energy. So, these things, they piled up, and I had health problems, high blood pressure, wasn't sleeping good, all these things. And it just, you, at that point you say, hey, geez, there has to be a better way.
Did you find that a better way came to you naturally, or what would you suggest to those who are starting out, given that you've written an entire book on this subject? Is it learn to walk before you run, or do you jump straight in? How do you go about this process of systemizing your business?
Actually, it's actually a lot easier than you think. There were some good books before I wrote mine on the topic. The E-Myth is well known on that. Working the System by Sam Carpenter, another well-run book.
Yep.
But the process is fairly simple. Take that list of things that you're doing every day, make a list. This takes not nearly as long as you think. You'll come up with 15, 20, maybe 30 things. Put them in a category, all the marketing related tasks, make written procedures for it, and hire a marketing virtual assistant or employee. Same thing with all your administrative and bookkeeping and back office stuff. Just make a list and write a little checklist for each one of those. That's basically how you get started. Now there's way advanced ways to do this and have workflow software and all kinds of things. But the general thing is get it down in writing, get how to do it down in writing, at least do it right, and delegate that off. Have someone else do it. There's so many options these days. There must be hundreds of virtual assistant companies online.
Yep.
There is tons of easy ways to hire people domestically, overseas, with all the communication we have, project management software, Slack, chat software and everything. It's very, very easy to get that going. Now, this stuff wasn't around in 2001. When I started, a lot of it wasn't around, some of the cooler, better tools and resources. But that's how I would get started. Make a list.
Yep.
Everything you're doing.
Yep.
Put it in categories. Delegate it out.
So we're effectively creating silos of activities initially. Do you, at any point in time, have any of these silos, let's refer to them as, do you ever have these people, virtual assistants, ever talking to each other, and do the roles in each silo ever overlap at all?
Well, sure, they can. And I'm not saying just virtual assistants. I mean, if you have the cash and the resources, I always recommend an in-person, a proper W-2 employee. So if you can afford that, not a lot of entrepreneurs can, at least at first, but definitely they can communicate to each other. And again, this goes back to the project software. It's so easy to delegate and pass off tasks and ask questions and then have multiple people collaborating on a thing. Slack makes it almost instantaneous. Screenshot software, little video walkthroughs like Loom and Cloud App. These things, I mean, you literally can demo on your computer how to do something, spend 5 minutes, shoot the link over to your virtual assistant, and they know how to do it forever, and then you're done. You don't have to do it anymore.
It's a wonderful thing that you're doing here, and obviously everything that you've talked about in your book, you're obviously using in your own business, My Company Works, aren't you?
Oh yeah, of course I have a proper team now. We have a couple of offices in a couple of states, but yeah, we still use virtual assistants. We use higher end software now, like Manifestly, Metatask is another one. For our workflows and our process, but everything is documented. They're called activated checklists. So whoever did the process checks it off. The software tracks that. We're very systemized, very process oriented, and frankly, it makes life easier. It makes us a better company, but it's also easier to replace people or just add people on very quickly. You can onboard them so quickly. Hey, here are your checklists that you do, your 5 checklists. Literally, instructions are embedded into the checklist. You just check off the items, and you've taken a process that would take weeks to get someone going, and they're ready to work in days or less.
You're good to go. Now, these are fundamentals for everybody who's on the call today. Fundamental things that can be taken from a small startup through to an existing medium, large size organization. In actual fact, the larger you get, I suspect the more important they would become. Now, Matt, I'd love to talk a little bit about fear and mindset as it applies to that moment in time that you hired your first person. I'd love to talk through that if we could.
Well, yeah. So I think it's fair to admit that pretty much every entrepreneur, unless you're already a really pretty aggressive type A type, is pretty terrified about making that first hire, right? You don't know what's going on. You've never had responsibility for someone else's life in that manner usually, and now you're kind of responsible for their, ability to eat and, take care of their family and stuff. So it's very intimidating. At least it was for me. So I just, when I get intimidated, when I get afraid of things, I start just writing things down and put, everything that you're thinking about into just a very simple, it could be a text file, it could be, Apple Notes or whatever, get everything down, you need help with, get a little training going, onboarding, and then you can start very small. These assistant companies, usually you don't have to hire a specific person. You just specify the kind of person you want, and they could have multiple people working for you in the background. So it's a lot less intimidating than doing, going through 100 resumes, doing in-person interviews or phone interviews and all these things. So start small is what I would say with that, especially with so many great virtual assistant companies and platforms out there.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm taking away from this is about ongoing education and learning about new ways. What sort of emphasis do you put on, even today, Matt, the importance of education and taking on and trialing new things?
I don't think a business can survive if you're not a quote unquote learning company,
Hmm.
right? If you're doing the exact same thing in your business that you were a year, 2 3 years ago, I don't see a big future in your company. Business literally just moves too fast. It's innovating too fast. It's too easy to copy, what works from a
Yeah.
company. So you may have what works this year. Someone's just going to copy that. And, frankly, sometimes it's $5 an hour kind of overseas labor. So how are you going to compete with those prices? Well, you better keep learning. You better keep innovating. Listen to your customers a lot. They'll tell you what they want. That's just education. Education by itself, you better keep your skill sets up, and there's so many, again, when I started out 2001, there wasn't 55 different online learning, things like Coursera or lynda.com or anything. So you need to keep your skills up too. I think very, very important, or at least know how to hire people with the modern skill set.
Absolutely. There's some sage advice coming out of this call today for everybody who's with us. Now, I always think about um, do you need to be the first kid on the block, the pioneer with the arrow in the back, or is it worthwhile considering, being that next person creating a business and, modeling other businesses' success?
Oh, geez, I think I think it's almost terrible to be the first person in the market. You're the one doing all the experimentation, making all the risks. So, nobody uses Friendster. Do you remember Friendster? Everyone uses
Vaguely.
Facebook. No one uses MySpace. Everyone uses Facebook.
Hmm.
Um, no one uses Alta Vista. Do you remember that search
Oh,
engine?
goodness me. Now we're going back.
Well, yeah, one of the, no one uses that. No one uses, it was, oh, geez. Well, geez, there were Lycos. There was an Excite. No one uses these search engines anymore. Google just kind of destroyed that market. So, I think being the first in almost anything, unless it's some really super unique idea. I mean, I love unique business ideas. I think you should try them if they're relatively, low risk.
Hmm.
But I wouldn't pour millions and millions into a brand absolutely new thing that, you don't even know. I would with something that's already been proven
Yeah.
to be popular and be like, hey, we'll just do it better. So long story short, I think it's really overrated trying to have a unique, brand new idea.
Yeah. And this call today, Matt, our audience would be lapping this up. It's like hand in glove. It's so on point with what the My Future Business show is about. Thank you very much for sharing what you're sharing with us today. Now, I'd love to start focusing, if we could, Matt, on the actual book itself. How is it constructed? What are the sequence of chapters? And I guess that's a good starting point. Can we talk a little bit about the contents of the book?
So there's three parts to the book. I promise it's not some epic, huge, long thing,
Hmm.
but it's three parts. The first part, I talk about what I call the founder superpowers.
Yeah.
So I really focus on making yourself a better founder. I think that's way, way more responsible for success than the idea or even process and all these other things. A really good founder with really good skills, which mostly can be learned,
Hmm.
um, is bound to succeed in almost any business. So you notice that venture capitalists keep throwing piles and piles of money at the exact same people over and over again. Well, this is because they have proven and they know how to start and run businesses, basically. So You can learn those skill sets. That's why I put them first. The second part of the book is basically the formula, how to do it. That's got 6 parts. Imagine it, plan it, start it, grow it, manage it, systemize it. So that takes you from the idea all the way to what we're talking about here, where it's, eventually after you grow it and you've managed it well, you can now start delegating, systemizing it, stuff like that. And then the final part is just actually just a few pages. It's what we call the startups, the founder scorecards and the startup scorecards. So it's just basically a self-analysis at the end.
Yeah.
And you could say, hey, these are, of the founder superpowers, here's kind of where I'm at with all of these. And you could just go and rank yourself, and you could say, hey, I need to work on this, or delegate that part. I'm not saying you have to work on every weakness. I'm definitely never going to be a rah-rah, like salesperson, outgoing leader kind of person, right? So I would hire and delegate for that. I would know that I could only do so much. I would focus on my strengths. And I do recommend that in the book. Focus on what you're really good at, delegate the rest.
Yep.
And same thing for the rest of the scorecards are basically saying, hey, how good is your business idea? How good have you done some of the basics on starting it, picking a business entity, getting your tax IDs, the nuts and bolts. And then there's really some marketing and management is pretty much everything else.
The thing that I'm taking from this call, Matt, and I think it's quite important for everybody to understand, is that you're simplifying, and rightly so, and otherwise, or at least perceived as being, a very complex process when it doesn't necessarily have to be that way, especially for the smaller online businesses. Would you agree with that?
Oh, geez, absolutely. One of the biggest problems I see in literally any company, from one person to, millions, is everything just gets too complicated. They have too many steps, too many products, too many procedures, too many process, too many materials. If you can radically simplify your company, it's just easier to run. And
Yep.
if you can radically simplify your processes, it's easier for lower level employees to do that, right? You shouldn't need a rocket scientist to do your blog posting thing, right? It shouldn't be a 28 step, complex thing. Simplify it out, make it where anyone can do it. Do a lot of videos, like I said, that actually will save you, dozens of pages written, just gobbledygook. Videos really help that out. But yeah, simplify hiring, simplify your product, simplify how you serve your customers. It's actually one of our core values at mycompanyworks.com. So simplification is one of our core values. So.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd love to talk a little bit about your My Company Works shortly. But as far as authorship is concerned, do you have anything in the pipeline? Are you doing any more writing?
Yeah, what we're thinking about, we're trying to see where the demand is here on this book, and it's been received very well. We crawled up to number 2 in the small business category, and we've been hovering around in the top 50 or 100 or so of small business books, which doesn't sound very impressive, but there's literally millions of books in there. So we're doing okay. We're trying to see what the people are getting the most value from, and like you've mentioned here today, almost everyone is talking about the management and the systemization part. They're really, really into. So probably we're going to kind of extend this whole startups made simple with things like perhaps operations made simple, systemizing made simple, really focus in on these really hard areas that entrepreneurs, hiring made simple, stuff like that.
All the subcategories.
Yeah, because people, really, I wouldn't say I give it a, not an in-depth. I give it pretty in-depth in the book. I mean, literally checklists all around. But we could always focus more on certain stuff like that. And I still write on our company blog at mycompanyworks.com. So I still stay quite a bit busy with writing.
I can only imagine how busy you are, having worked with thousands of entrepreneurs, Matt. I often like to ask, having worked with so many people who are very switched on, and you've taken them on this journey, this wonderful journey to build a better business for themselves, what is the common thread that you've taken from being exposed to so many different types of business owners?
Well, so that segues perfectly into the book. So I wrote about it in the what I call the founder superpower. So to revisit that, I have a list of 16 of them, but they're four very broad categories on that, and I'll just go over them real brief. First one is energy. Okay, so I've noticed that the people that tend to succeed are pretty high. They don't have to be high energy, just not low energy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so included in that category are the superpower number one, health. Superpower number two, perseverance. I include that in energy. Superpower number three, optimism. I don't see a lot of negative, Nancy type entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
They may exist. I haven't seen a bunch of negative ones in my life ever. Right? And then the superpower number four is momentum. So that's hard to describe, but it's basically you feel it when you got it, when you're working on something and things are coming together, you take that energy and you keep using it. So energy, very, very, very important. And then second grouping, vision,
Mm-hmm.
almost, and this is, again, you don't have to have all these, just focus on the ones you're good at. These are just the ones that I've seen over and over come from really good entrepreneurs. Vision has three more superpowers, clear vision, clear goals, and product obsession. This is your typical Steve Jobs type, I know exactly what I want. I know exactly where I want this product to look like. I'm going to obsess over it, make sure my customers love it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Very, very good grouping of superpowers there. The third, which is probably super obvious, but it's execution. So and this is the category of execution. So within that category are the superpowers. Agency mindset. That's a complex word for agency is basically get her done. Does the person get things done?
Yeah.
That's it. They say, they don't come up with a lot of excuses or things like that. They just get things done. Superpower number 9, resourcefulness. I can't spend all day, holding my employees' hands and showing them how to do various things or how to do a Google search on their question or their, click help in the software that they're using. You can be resourceful and get out there. You have to be resourceful.
Yeah. Find a way.
Yeah, find a way. Personal productivity is the next one. Real big for me. I'm a big GTD guy. Work on personal productivity. It just amplifies what you're capable of doing. Yep. So pretty much from what I can tell, some employees are literally 3 times more productive than the others working the same amount of hours. And that just comes down to personal productivity. And that's triple for founders. You really need to work on that. Also involved in execution is good decisions and problem solving. I think those are kind of self-explanatory. The final one would be final category, leadership. That encompasses good communication skills, accountability, team development, and the last one, courage to be disliked, which I really like that one. And I get a lot of good feedback on courage to be disliked. I think one of the big problems I see with founders, leaders, managers, they simply just want to be everyone's friend. And, that's great if people are performing, but sometimes you have to do things that are not pleasant. And sometimes the people will not like you for that.
Yeah, it's the courage to make, unpalatable decisions so it's in the best interest of the business, isn't it?
It is, and you don't have to be a monster. We're not talking about slashing wages or cutting enormous amounts of people, although some horrible people do that all the time. But what I'm talking about is just having the uncomfortable conversation about someone's performance, and sometimes you do have to cut people. Literally, there's no money. Sometimes you have to cut people who you like a lot, who are even doing a good job. You just don't have the resources. So things like that.
Yeah, it seems to me that I guess that list would also, on balance, Matt, have a bit to do about some of the things that entrepreneurs can look to avoid. Is that a part of this breakdown?
Oh yeah, sure. So pretty much in every chapter I have on these superpowers, I mention the things what you're supposed to not to do, and frankly, the whole book. I actually start off in the introduction talking about the concept of via negativa, which basically is say get rid of the things that actually cause problems first. It's not so much a to-do book. It's don't make these huge mistakes. And And there's a lot of huge mistakes. I have made so many mistakes. The whole book could just be about my mistakes and the screw ups that I have caused in my various 18 years in business. So that's a lot of the book is just about, hey, if you're going to work on energy or vision or execution, if you're going to work on energy, don't power up on pizza and donuts all day and sleep 3 hours a night. I can guarantee you that doesn't work. You know why? Because I've done that, and it doesn't. It destroys your health.
It didn't work for you?
Did not work. It did not work, believe it or not. And, leadership, screaming at everyone all day, belittling, having nothing written down, not working on your team at all. These are all massive, massive things to avoid.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm loving this call. I really like digging deep now. As far as the book is concerned, where is it available?
So it's Amazon.com, just like pretty much every other book in the world, and all the other, the international Amazons. It's on Kindle. It's also in paperback if you want to pay a little more. It's very, very cheap right now. I have it at 99 cents if you want to grab it. It's
Fantastic.
Kind of an introductory kind of thing. I think that's an enormous bargain. I mean, just to not make even one of the mistakes, you can't afford 99 cents to just not make one of the huge mistakes, of which I list many in there. I think it's a great bargain. Also, if you ever use our services at mycompanyworks.com, we'll just give you the book for free.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a wonderful segue, because I would like to talk about My Company Works. What is it that My Company Works actually does, Matt?
So works real nice with the book. We help people start companies. So we do all of the filings necessary to start your company, get a tax ID. We help with business licensing, stuff like that. All 50 U.S. states and D.C. We do corporations, LLCs, DBAs, sole proprietors, all the various business entity types, and very, very inexpensively. The only thing we cannot offer is legal advice. So if you ever have we have a lot of self-guided guides and materials, and frankly, almost everyone's just choosing an LLC these days. But if you need advice, we don't offer that. But what we can do is take what your lawyer would do for $1,000 or $1,500, and we do it for like $79 plus the state fee. So we can get you a company going very, very inexpensively. We also, on the maintenance side, we can be your registered agent, which is something you can learn about when you start your company. The book goes over it. And we can also do all your compliance activities. We can, if you have an annual report due, we do all that, plus your minutes and alerts and stuff like that. So
and it's
you can put your company on autopilot.
Yeah, it's no surprise to me, Matt, that when I went to your mycompanyworks.com site, that you had videos about, the downfalls, the things to avoid, and why you should use this service. It was wonderful. It's just so easy to understand.
Yeah, thank you. So that's the main thing. A lot of people are like, well, geez, I can file it. I can go to the Secretary of State website and download the forms and file it. And it's like, that's great. And you can do that. But, in certain states, you're going to lose a month because you didn't do one little tiny thing on the thing. It's going to sit in a queue. They're going to reject it. And now you're going to take another month, whereas a company like ours, we have relationships, we have accounts, we get things filed in days that'll take you weeks. We don't get them rejected for the most part. 99% of the time, they're not rejected. And we do all those necessary things, bylaws, operating agreements. These are legal documents that protect you and protect you from, certain things, audits, internal disagreements and stuff, all included in our package, which you would never get from the Secretary of State. You'd have to go to a lawyer to go.
See, this is the thing, everybody who's on the call with us today. It's about being resourceful, as we've talked about in the book, Matt. It's about going to those who know how to get the job done. Since 2001, you've helped more than 60,000 companies get up and running. You've got close to 3,000 five-star ratings. You're an Inc. 5000. You're Better Business Bureau accredited. All the ticks and the boxes are there. Matt, it's just been such a wonderful opportunity spending some time with you on the My Future Business show today.
Thanks, Rick. I had a really good time.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.